You proposed to my fiancée? I asked. It was just 3 dates. Then I found out my brother drained my inheritance with our parents' help. So I sued them all. My name is Marcus, I'm 32 years old, and I'm a civil engineer. I live in a small town in Ohio, the same one I grew up in, just recently moved back after working remotely for a major construction firm. I never thought I'd come back here after everything. But the raise I got last year made it possible to buy a place and move home. I thought maybe it would help me feel like I had some kind of closure, a way to finally get over all the crap from my childhood. Growing up as the oldest of 3 wasn't easy. There's always a lot of expectation when you're the firstborn. But I didn't mind it. I loved school, I loved working hard, and I loved the idea of making something out of nothing. I guess that's why I ended up going to Purdue University and landing a decent job. I was doing well. But looking back, no matter what I did, it never felt like it was enough. Then there was Aaron. He's 29 now. Always been the golden child. The one who could do no wrong in my mom's eyes. Aaron had this charm to him. This ability to float through life with a smile on his face, while everyone else cleaned up his mess. He got everything handed to him. I worked 2 jobs during high school just to save up enough for a car when I turned 18. Aaron, though, he got a brand new Chevy for his birthday, no questions asked. My mom gave him everything. It always felt like no matter how much I achieved, no matter how hard I worked, he was the one who got the praise, the love, the attention. Leah, my sister, is the youngest. She's 27 now, a paramedic, and we've always been close. We both saw through Aaron's act, but it was harder for me. I felt like I should have been the one my mom was proud of, the one she cheered for. Instead, I was just the one she relied on. Always the responsible one. I learned early on that if I wanted anything, I'd have to make it happen on my own. Victor, my best friend, he's always been the one to tell me to stop trying to get approval from my family. Stop trying to fix your family, man, he'd say. They're broken. You'll just keep getting hurt if you keep trying. And he was right. Every time I tried to show them I had made something of myself, it was like they only saw the failures, the things that didn't fit their idea of success. I remember one night, I was sitting at the bar with Victor, talking about how I finally got this raise. I was excited. Thought it'd be my chance to show everyone that I could do it on my own. That I didn't need anyone's approval, especially my mom's. But Victor just looked at me, took a swig of his beer, and said, "Dude, you don't need their approval. You just need to stop caring." I didn't listen. Not then. And maybe that's why, a couple of months later, when I moved back into town, I still felt that old frustration bubbling up. It wasn't enough to be successful on my own. I wanted them to see it, to feel proud of me. But I knew, deep down, that nothing would ever be enough. Not while Aaron was still there, always getting the spotlight. A year after moving back home, I met Elise at a professional networking event. She was a project manager, smart and confident, and she had this way of lighting up a room without even trying. We started talking over drinks, and before long, we found out we had a lot in common. A shared love for architecture, classic films, and a deep appreciation for good design. The conversation flowed easily, something I hadn't experienced in a while. Victor was the first to meet her. We invited him to join us one evening after work. He's always had a sharp tongue, no filter, but when he met Elise, even he couldn't help but be impressed. He cracked a few sarcastic jokes, but Elise fired right back with her own brand of humor. It was easy to see why I was falling for her. She wasn't just beautiful. She was someone who could challenge me in all the right ways. Victor, ever the realist, leaned over to me at one point during the evening and muttered, "All right, man. She's a keeper. But remember what I told you. Don't go rushing in. Family drama's still there, and you don't want to drag her into that mess." I nodded, but I didn't take his advice seriously. For the first time in a long time, it felt like I had something of my own. Something that wasn't tied to my family or my past. I wasn't going to let that go just because things had been complicated before. By Christmas, I had made up my mind. It felt like the right time to introduce Elise to my family. It had been nearly a year, and she'd been incredibly patient with me as I navigated the complexities of my family's dynamics. I knew she was different. I just hoped they would see that too. I was nervous, though. I'd never brought anyone into this mess before, and while Elise was warm and confident, my family was a different beast entirely. I didn't want her to be caught up in all the drama, but at the same time, I wanted her to be a part of my life. I couldn't keep hiding her away, not when she meant so much to me. Elise, to her credit, wasn't the type to shy away from awkward situations. She'd already met Victor and Leah, and both of them had given her their stamp of approval. But family? That was another thing entirely. I hadn't even told my mom or Aaron about her yet. I had been holding off, worried about how they'd react. It wasn't that they would outright say anything negative. It was the subtle judgments that always stung the most. The passive-aggressive remarks about how serious I was about anyone, or the uncomfortable silences when things didn't go according to their expectations. I wasn't ready for that, but I also didn't want to keep hiding her away. Christmas came, and with it, the decision to finally bring Elise to my family's gathering. I convinced myself everything would be fine. Elise and I had been talking about the possibility of a future together, and I was ready to take the next step. My family didn't get a say in that. I would show them I had my own life now, with or without their approval. Elise looked stunning that day, casual but effortlessly put together, with that self-assured smile of hers that made my heart do a little flip. As we walked up to my mom's house, I felt a knot in my stomach. I told myself it was just nerves, but deep down, I knew I was bracing for impact. The Christmas gathering was exactly as I expected, chaotic, loud, and filled with all the usual drama. My mom had gone all out with the decorations, as she always did, and the house smelled of roasted turkey and cinnamon. Aaron, of course, was already sitting at the table with a glass of wine in hand, chatting away with my mom like he owned the place. Leah was talking to Victor in the corner, her eyes flicking over to me and Elise as we walked in, a knowing smile tugging at her lips. "Elise, this is my family," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Mom, Aaron, Leah, you've met Victor already." Elise smiled warmly and gave a quick wave to everyone, but I could see the hesitation in her eyes. It wasn't easy walking into a room full of people who had all the unspoken history between them, but she didn't let it show. I admired that about her. "Nice to finally meet you all," she said, her voice steady and calm. Mom immediately took the lead, as she always did in these situations, pulling Elise into a conversation about work, asking about her background and how she'd ended up in the area. Elise answered with ease, making small talk about her job and interests, but I could tell her focus was split between trying to keep up with my mom's rapid-fire questions and making sure I wasn't feeling out of place. I stayed close by, watching the interaction unfold, hoping it wouldn't turn into one of those awkward family moments that I could never escape. It was about an hour into the evening, after dinner had been served and most of the presents had been opened, that I made the mistake of showing my mom a picture I had taken of Elise and me a few weeks prior. It had been a casual moment. Us at the park, smiling at the camera as Elise adjusted her scarf in the chilly winter air. "Look, Mom, I just wanted to show you how happy we are," I said, handing her my phone, hoping this wouldn't cause the usual uncomfortable tension. But then Aaron's voice rang out, sharp and accusatory. "Wait, you're dating her?" he sneered, his face scrunching in a mix of surprise and distaste. I felt the blood rush to my face, but I tried to keep my cool. Aaron's reaction was exactly what I had feared. It wasn't just that he was upset. It was the tone in his voice, the way he looked at Elise like she was some kind of enemy. He was trying to get under my skin, just like he always had. "What's the problem, Aaron?" I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "You've met Elise. Why are you acting like this?" "Oh, I'm sorry. I just didn't realize you had ex-girlfriends on the menu." Aaron shot Elise a look that was a little too cold for comfort. "What's that supposed to mean?" Elise asked, her brow furrowing as she set down her glass of wine. She wasn't backing down. Aaron smirked. "I didn't realize you'd be so comfortable dating my ex. But, hey, good for you, Marcus." I could feel the heat in my chest rising, but I couldn't do anything in front of everyone. Elise looked unbothered, but I could see the tension in her jaw, the way her eyes flicked toward me for reassurance. "It's not what you think," Elise said calmly. "Aaron and I went on a few casual dates before Marcus and I even met. It wasn't serious. We didn't even get past 3 dates." Aaron scoffed and turned away, clearly irritated. "Whatever. Doesn't matter to me." But my mom, of course, had to jump in. "Aaron, don't make a scene," she said, her voice rising in that way she did when she was trying to keep the peace, but ended up making it worse. "Marcus, I just don't think you should be bringing people like that around here. People we don't know much about." Her eyes were wide with concern, but it wasn't genuine. It was the same old protective behavior that made me feel like I had to constantly fight for any validation. She always gave Aaron the benefit of the doubt, and I was tired of it. "Elise is fine," I said through gritted teeth, feeling my patience slip. "She's more than fine. And I'm not asking for your approval, Mom." The room went quiet for a moment, the air thick with tension. Leah, thankfully, stepped in, rolling her eyes as she took a sip of her wine. "Aaron, stop acting like a child," she said. "It's a bit pathetic, really. Grow up." I couldn't help but feel a little grateful for Leah at that moment. She was the one person who seemed to get it. She didn't need to understand everything, but she knew enough to not make a scene like Aaron. But my mom wasn't having it. She stood up, her voice shaking slightly as she tried to regain control of the conversation. "You know how sensitive Aaron is about these things," she said, looking at Elise and me. "You should have thought about that before you." Before she could finish, Aaron snapped, his voice rising with frustration. "I don't need you defending me, Mom. I don't need anyone's sympathy." He shot me one last look, full of anger and jealousy. I could feel Elise's hand tighten in mine as we both stood there, caught in the crossfire of a family drama I didn't want to be a part of. She was unbothered outwardly, but I could see the unease in her eyes, the way she glanced at me like she was trying to understand the tension. "I think we've had enough of this conversation for one night," I said, my voice firmer now. "We're just going to head out." "Elise, I'm sorry," I added quickly, pulling her away from the growing chaos. This wasn't supposed to happen, but Elise squeezed my hand, shaking her head slightly. "It's okay, Marcus. It's not your fault." As we walked out the door, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of the problems that Aaron would create. The tension had only just started, and I knew things weren't going to get easier. This was going to be a lot more complicated than I had thought. 2 months had passed since that awkward Christmas gathering, and despite my best efforts to push the family drama to the back of my mind, I couldn't ignore it. Elise and I had grown closer, but the underlying tension with Aaron, well, it wasn't something you could just forget. I had planned something special for Elise's birthday. Something big. I wanted to propose. I was tired of waiting for the perfect moment because, let's face it, perfect didn't exist in my family. The proposal was going to be on a rooftop restaurant in the city with a view of the skyline and a private dinner just for the two of us. It felt right. It felt like the next step. Victor, of course, knew about the plan. He was the one who convinced me to keep it small. No grandiose gestures, no big fanfare. Just me, Elise, and a meaningful moment. "She's going to love it, man," Victor had said as we sat at the bar, him nursing a whiskey, me sipping on a beer. "Don't overthink it. Just be real with her." The night of the proposal, everything went exactly as planned. Elise looked beautiful, her eyes sparkling under the soft glow of the city lights, the soft hum of distant conversations blending with the clinking of glasses. The dinner was perfect. The mood was perfect. Everything felt right. After the main course, as we shared dessert, I pulled out the ring from my pocket. Elise's eyes widened, and I could see the shock mixed with joy. She smiled, her cheeks flushing as I took a deep breath and asked her, "Elise, will you marry me?" The crowd at the nearby tables cheered, and I held my breath, waiting for her answer. For a split second, I was afraid. But then she nodded, her voice steady and clear. "Yes, yes, Marcus." I slid the ring onto her finger, and the small, intimate gathering erupted in applause. The waitstaff had already planned for the moment, and a small bouquet of flowers was placed in front of her. It felt like the world had stopped for a brief moment. Everything was perfect. But then, just as we were about to share a kiss, I saw a figure storming toward us from the corner of my eye. It was Aaron. Of course, it was Aaron. His face was flushed with anger, his posture rigid. "Elise, what the hell is this?" Aaron's voice was loud and sharp, cutting through the celebration like a knife. Elise and I pulled back from each other, stunned by his sudden appearance. I stood up, instinctively moving in front of Elise. "Aaron, what are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but already feeling the knot of tension in my stomach tightening. "What's she doing here?" Aaron shot back, his eyes flicking to Elise, then back to me, his voice dripping with disdain. "You seriously think you can just swoop in and steal my spotlight? You know how I feel about this." I looked over at Elise, who was clearly taken aback by Aaron's outburst. She hadn't been prepared for this. "Aaron, this is between me and Marcus," she said calmly, trying to regain control of the situation. "You need to calm down." But he wasn't having it. "No, I'm not going to sit here and watch you marry him, after everything." His voice rose, and I could see the anger in his eyes. It was no longer about me. It was about him. The jealousy was thick, suffocating the room. "Stop this, Aaron," I said, my tone firm now. "This is not the time or the place. You're making a scene." But it wasn't just me Aaron was angry with. His gaze flicked back to Elise, and then he spat. "You're just another girl who's going to end up disappointing him, just like you always do." He turned to me, his voice bitter and cutting. "You think you're going to fix things with her? Just wait." I felt my temper flare, but I kept it in check. Elise, to her credit, stood tall beside me, her hand slipping into mine. "We don't need your approval, Aaron," she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing in the room. "We're happy, and we're getting married. That's all that matters." But Aaron wasn't done yet. "You're making a huge mistake, Marcus," he sneered. "You don't even know what you're getting into. She's just like all the others. You'll regret this." Before I could respond, Aaron turned on his heel and stormed out of the restaurant, the door slamming behind him. The room was quiet for a moment, the tension still thick in the air. People stared at us, the disruption hanging over the evening like a dark cloud. "Are you okay?" Elise whispered, looking up at me, her face pale from the confrontation. I nodded, though I didn't feel okay. "Yeah, let's forget about it, all right? It's our night." I turned to the waiter, signaling that we were ready to move forward. But even as we tried to get back to the moment, I could feel the weight of Aaron's words lingering in my mind. He was right about one thing. I had no idea what I was getting into, but I wasn't backing down. Not now. Let's make the most of tonight, Elise said softly, squeezing my hand. And we did. But as I glanced out the window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last time Aaron would try to destroy something good in my life. But I wasn't going to let him. Not this time. The following weeks were a blur of conflicting emotions. Elise and I were ecstatic, but Aaron's outburst had left a mark. We tried to push it aside, focusing on the future, our future. But the tension between me and my family had only grown, and it was clear things weren't going to settle down anytime soon. The first real confrontation came 2 months after the proposal, when Aaron invited us over for dinner. He'd been acting strangely polite on the phone when he called to extend the invitation, almost like nothing had happened. Part of me wanted to believe he was extending the olive branch, trying to make amends. But the other part of me, the part that had been burned one too many times, knew better. When Elise and I arrived at Aaron's house, the mood was awkward. Aaron greeted us at the door with a strained smile, his handshake tight, almost forced. "Glad you could make it," he said, his voice too cheerful, too rehearsed. "Thanks for inviting us," I replied, keeping things casual. I didn't want to rock the boat more than it already had been. But as soon as we stepped inside, I felt the undercurrent of tension. Mom and Leo were there, sitting in the living room. They all seemed to be on edge, watching us closely, like they were waiting for something to go wrong. Dinner was uncomfortable. Everyone was trying to be polite, but the elephant in the room was huge. We made small talk about work, about the weather, about anything we could to avoid the topic of my engagement. Elise was doing her best to stay engaged, to not let the heavy silence bother her, but I could see the strain on her face. She wasn't used to this kind of atmosphere, and neither was I. We were two people caught between two worlds, my chaotic, dysfunctional family and the peaceful life we were trying to build. Halfway through the meal, Aaron's voice cut through the silence again. "So, how's the wedding planning going?" he asked, his eyes flicking over to me. "Elise and I are getting things together," I said, forcing a smile. "We're keeping it simple." Aaron's eyes narrowed slightly, but he quickly masked it with another forced grin. "Simple, huh? I don't know. I think Marcus is the type of guy who'd go all out for something like that." He glanced at Mom, and I could see the look they shared. The same one they always had when they thought I was trying too hard, trying to be something I wasn't. But I wasn't backing down. "Not now. We're doing what feels right for us," I said firmly, holding Elise's hand under the table, squeezing it to let her know I was there, even if my family wasn't. The dinner dragged on, and I could tell Elise was uncomfortable. She wasn't used to the passive-aggressive comments or the way my family always seemed to talk about me behind my back, as if I couldn't see it. But I couldn't sit there any longer. After dessert, I stood up, excusing myself. "Thanks for dinner, but we should be going," I said, my voice cold but controlled. "I think we've had enough for tonight." Elise stood up with me, looking at me with that concerned glance she always gave when she knew something wasn't right. I wanted to get out of there. I needed to. My mind was spinning, and the last thing I needed was to sit through another minute of forced smiles and passive comments. But as we moved toward the door, Aaron stopped me. "Marcus, hold on," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "We need to talk." I turned to face him, and in that moment, I saw the flash of anger in his eyes. It was like he couldn't hold it in any longer. "What's going on, man?" he asked, his tone sharper than I expected. "You think you can just walk in here, act like nothing happened, and then walk out when you don't get your way? You think I'm going to sit back and watch you ruin everything?" "Ruin everything?" I said, my voice rising now. "You're the one who tried to ruin my proposal. You're the one who can't let go of the past, of the way you've always been treated like the golden child, while I've been treated like the screw-up." Elise stepped forward, her hand on my arm, trying to calm me down, but I was too far gone. The anger that had been building inside me since that Christmas gathering finally spilled over. Aaron's face twisted with resentment. "You're not the victim here, Marcus," he spat. "You've always been the one who's had it easy. You think just because you've got a little success, you can look down on me? You think you're better than me?" "I never said I was better than you," I snapped back. "But I'm tired of trying to make you happy, tired of trying to fix a family that's always been broken. I'm done, Aaron. I'm done trying to be the person everyone expects me to be. I'm not living for you anymore." His eyes widened, the shock written all over his face. I could see the moment it hit him. He hadn't expected me to say it. He hadn't expected me to finally stand up for myself. For once, I wasn't going to be the one apologizing, the one fixing everything. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me anymore. Before he could say anything else, I turned to Elise, who was watching the whole exchange in silence. her face a mix of confusion and concern. I grabbed her hand and said, "Let's go. Now." As we walked out, I heard Aaron shout behind me, "You're making a mistake, Marcus. You'll regret it." But I didn't care. I didn't care anymore. I was done. The car ride home was quiet. Elise didn't ask any questions, though I could feel her eyes on me every now and then. The weight of the argument still hung heavy in the air, but I knew something had changed. This was the moment. The moment I finally chose myself. Finally chose Elise. And I knew, deep down, I wasn't going to let Aaron or anyone else tear it apart. It felt like a battle had been won, though the war was far from over. The weeks that followed the dinner with Aaron felt like a heavy fog had settled over my life. I had made the decision to cut ties with Aaron, at least for the time being, but I could still feel his words echoing in my head. And as much as I wanted to focus on Elise and our future, the weight of the family conflict never seemed to fully leave me. Elise was incredibly supportive through it all. She never once made me feel like I was doing something wrong, and her unwavering belief in me was both comforting and infuriating. I wanted to believe her when she said everything would be okay, but the reality of the situation made it hard to ignore. My family had a way of burrowing under my skin, pulling me back into their chaos, even when I tried to walk away. Then, one night, the phone rang. It was from my mom. "Marcus, we need to talk," she said before I could even say hello. Her voice was tight, like she was struggling to hold it together. "Mom, what's going on?" I asked, my stomach already tightening in anticipation. There was no way this conversation was going to be anything good. "Please just listen to me," she said. "It's about your brother." I felt a cold knot form in my chest. "Aaron, what now?" I pinched the bridge of my nose, trying to stay calm. "What happened?" "Marcus, he's been drinking again," she said, her voice breaking. "He's been really unstable, and he's making everyone's life miserable. He's threatening to hurt himself, and I don't know what to do." My pulse quickened. It was like I had heard this before. The same sob story, the same drama, the same chaos Aaron had always created. But hearing it from my mom, hearing the desperation in her voice, stirred something inside me. Guilt, anger, frustration. It all mixed together in a toxic brew, and I wasn't sure which emotion to deal with first. I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair. "Mom, this isn't something I can fix," I said, my voice low but firm. "You need to stop enabling him." "I'm not enabling him," she insisted. I don't know what else to do. He's my son." "I know," I said, the words coming out bitter. "But you can't keep fixing his mistakes. He's not a kid anymore." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear her steeling herself. "I don't know what to do, Marcus. Can you just come over? Can you just talk to him?" I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar pull of obligation. I hadn't been over to their house in weeks, not since the blow-up with Aaron. I had promised Elise that I was done with all of it, but the weight of my mom's voice made it hard to ignore. She was right about one thing. Aaron wasn't a kid anymore. He was a grown man who had made his own choices, and yet here I was, being dragged back into his drama. "Fine," I said after a beat. "I'll come by, but I'm not promising anything." "Thank you," she whispered, relief palpable in her voice. "Please, just help him." "I'll be there in 20, I said, and hung up. When I arrived at their house, it was eerily quiet. The door was slightly ajar, and I could see my mom pacing in the living room, wringing her hands. She looked up when I entered, her eyes wide with a mix of exhaustion and hope. "Aaron's upstairs," she said quietly. He's not in a good place, Marcus. He needs help." I nodded, stepping past her into the house. The familiar smell of stale air and old furniture filled my nose, and for a second, it felt like nothing had changed. But I knew everything had changed. I climbed the stairs slowly, dreading what I would find. As I reached the top, I saw Aaron sitting in the dark, hunched over on the bed with a bottle of liquor in his hand. His eyes were bloodshot, and there was a vacant look to him, a look I had seen too many times over the years. "Hey," I said quietly, leaning against the doorframe. Aaron looked up, his face twisting in a mixture of frustration and something else I couldn't quite place. "What do you want?" he slurred, his words thick with alcohol. "I came to talk," I said, my voice steady, though inside I was boiling. "We need to talk about what happened, Aaron. About everything." His lips curled into a half-smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, so now you're the one who gets to tell me what to do." I took a step forward, trying to keep my composure. "No, I'm here because Mom asked me to. Because you're acting like a kid again, and you're hurting yourself." His expression darkened, and he stood up, throwing the bottle across the room. "I don't need you lecturing me," he spat. "You think you have all the answers, but you don't know a damn thing." "I know you're spiraling," I said, the words coming out sharper than I meant. "I know you don't want help, but you're pushing everyone away, Aaron. You're not just pushing me away, You're pushing Mom away, too. He froze, his eyes flashing with something dangerous. Don't bring Mom into this. She's the reason I'm like this, Marcus. She always took your side, always treated you like you were the better one. And now you think you can fix me? My chest tightened. This isn't about Mom. This is about you and your choices. I'm tired of cleaning up your mess, Aaron. I'm done. His face contorted with rage. You think you're better than me, don't you? All high and mighty with your fancy job, your nice house. Well, guess what? You're still the same person who couldn't make a damn thing of himself until you started working for someone else. You're nothing without your career, Marcus. Nothing. I felt a surge of anger, but I didn't give in. I'm not the one who needs to be fixed. You're the one who needs help. But I can't be the one to fix you. Not anymore. Aaron's breathing was shallow, his fists clenched. Fine, he sneered. Walk away, like you always do. I turned and walked out, my heart heavy with the weight of everything I had just said and everything I had just lost. The anger wasn't gone. It was just buried under a pile of disappointment, of years of trying to save someone who didn't want to be saved. When I went downstairs, my mom was waiting in the living room, her face etched with worry. Is he okay? She asked, her voice trembling. No, I said, my voice steady but cold. But he's never going to be if he doesn't want help. And I'm not the one to fix him. The finality in my words hung in the air between us like a thick fog. My mom didn't say anything. She just nodded, her eyes wet with unshed tears. I walked out of that house, feeling a weight lift off my chest, but also feeling the unmistakable sting of what I had just lost. The ties that had bound me to Aaron, to my family, were finally severed. But at what cost? As I drove away, I knew this was the last time I would ever try to fix what was broken. I was done. For good. The weeks following my final confrontation with Aaron were a strange mix of peace and unresolved tension. My mom tried to reach out a few times, leaving voicemails and sending texts, but I didn't respond. I knew she wanted to fix things, to convince me to forgive Aaron, to try to mend the broken threads of our family. But I was done. I had made my choice. Then, one evening, as I was sitting at my desk, working on a new project, I got a call. It was from Leah. Hey, Marcus. You got a minute? Yeah, what's up? I asked, my voice wary. Leah was the one person who always seemed to understand, but I had no idea what she was about to say. Listen, I don't know how to tell you this, but I think you need to know, she said, her voice low. You're not going to like this, but I think you should hear it from me first. Just tell me, I said, the knot in my stomach tightening. There's been some stuff going on with Mom and Dad. I don't know all the details, but I think they've been messing around with the inheritance. Your grandfather's money, Marcus. I froze, my hand gripping the phone so tightly I could feel the heat in my palm. The inheritance. My grandfather had left me and Leah a decent amount when he passed a few years ago, money he had saved from years of hard work. My parents had promised us that they would manage it well, that it would be there when we needed it. Messing around with it? I repeated, my voice strained. What do you mean? I don't know all of it, but I've been looking into some things. Turns out, they've been dipping into the trust, using it for things that aren't exactly, well, what they're supposed to be used for, Leah explained. And it's not just the money from Grandpa's account. It's our money. I leaned back in my chair, processing what she was saying. My mind raced as I pieced the information together. My parents had always been a bit careless with money, but this was something else. The idea that they had been mismanaging our inheritance, using it for things that weren't ours to spend, was infuriating. Leah, are you sure? I asked, my voice sharp. You're telling me they've been taking money that's supposed to be ours? Yeah, Leah said, her voice barely above a whisper. I think they've been covering up their debts with it. They've been using it to cover some of Aaron's messes, too. His failed investments, his failed ventures. My stomach dropped. They've been using our inheritance to bail him out. Exactly. And it gets worse. I found out they've been taking money out of the account without telling us. And no one's keeping track of it. It's a mess, Marcus. I don't know how far this goes, but I think we need to do something about it. I didn't even have to think. We're going to get a lawyer, I said, my decision clear. This isn't just something we can ignore. We need to take action. I agree, Leah said, sounding relieved. I've already been looking into a lawyer. I'll get in touch with them tomorrow. The conversation ended with a sense of finality. I was angry, more angry than I had been in a long time, but I also felt a sense of relief. Finally, something concrete. Something we could do. I wasn't going to let my parents steal from us, not after everything I had already given up, not after everything they had already taken. The next few days passed in a blur as we contacted an estate lawyer and began the process of investigating what had happened to our inheritance. It was like peeling back layers of a rotting house, each discovery more disheartening than the last. Our parents had been reckless, and they had used our money to cover up their own mistakes. It wasn't just Aaron's failures they had been bailing out. It was their own financial mismanagement, too. By the time we had gathered all the evidence we needed, it was clear that a lawsuit was the only option. The money that had been meant for me and Leah was gone, misused and mismanaged. And my parents were going to have to answer for it. We filed the lawsuit against them, demanding the return of the misappropriated funds and compensation for their breach of trust. The legal proceedings were slow, but it didn't take long for things to start unraveling for my parents. When the estate froze their assets, they had no choice but to downsize, to take low-paying jobs to make ends meet. It was humiliating for them, and I could see how much it hurt my mom's pride. But it didn't make me feel any sympathy. Aaron, of course, wasn't happy either. With his access to family money cut off, he was forced to face the consequences of his own actions for the first time in his life. He called me multiple times, begging for money, complaining about how hard things were. But I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for him anymore. "Get a job, Aaron," I said coldly when he called one night, asking for help. "I'm not giving you anything. You've had your chances." "But Marcus, I can't. I don't have anything," he pleaded, his voice breaking. "Please, just this once, help me out." "No, I'm done," I said, my voice hardening. "You've never learned to stand on your own, and I'm not your crutch anymore." It felt good to say that. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one getting walked all over. I wasn't the one expected to fix everything. I had finally broken free. Elise and I scaled back our wedding plans, deciding to keep it small. But we both felt a sense of relief. We were distancing ourselves from the toxic cycle, from the suffocating neediness of my family. Things weren't perfect, but they were better. We were building something on our own, without the weight of my family's expectations. By the time everything was settled, the lawsuit had been won. Leah and I had reclaimed most of the inheritance, and my parents had been forced to pay for their mistakes. I didn't feel victorious, though. I felt empty. I had lost something in all of this, something I couldn't get back. But what I had gained was more valuable. I had gained my freedom, and with it, a sense of peace. I wasn't beholden to them anymore. And for the first time in my life, I could look forward without feeling like I was carrying the weight of their mistakes on my shoulders. Things were finally starting to look up, and I couldn't wait to start a new chapter with Elise. It was just the two of us now, and that was all I needed. Elise and I stood at the altar, surrounded by a small group of friends and family, including Leah, Victor, and a few close colleagues. The wedding was everything we had wanted: intimate, simple, and filled with the kind of warmth that made it feel truly ours. We had scaled back the original plans, focusing on what mattered most: each other. And for the first time in a long time, I could honestly say I was happy. The past year had been a whirlwind of conflict, legal battles, and emotional exhaustion. My relationship with my family had been torn apart, but standing here with Elise, holding her hand, feeling her warmth beside me, it felt like the weight had finally been lifted. There was no more pressure, no more guilt trips, no more expectations. It was just the two of us now, moving forward together. As the ceremony wrapped up, the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, and the crowd cheered. Elise's smile was wide, her eyes glistening with emotion as she leaned in to kiss me. I kissed her back, savoring the moment. This was the life we had fought for, the life we were building together. Later, as we were celebrating at the reception, I took a moment to step away from the crowd, standing by the windows and watching the sunset. The soft glow of the evening light felt symbolic of how far we'd come. The past was still there, looming in the distance, but it no longer had a hold on me. "Hey," Elise said, joining me by the window. She wrapped her arms around me from behind, resting her head on my shoulder. "You okay?" I smiled, pulling her closer. "Yeah, I'm more than okay." I paused, glancing at the people we had chosen to share this moment with, the ones who truly mattered. "I think I'm finally free. Free from all of it." "From them?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with understanding. I nodded. "From them. From the expectations. From the guilt. It's like a weight has been lifted." I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. I finally feel like I'm living for myself. For us. Elise squeezed my hand. "You've done a lot for others, Marcus. And I think they'll eventually understand that you need to put yourself first. You deserve this. You deserve us." I turned to face her, kissing her forehead. "I never knew what I was missing until I found you." She smiled, her eyes shining. "You're not missing anything anymore." Our wedding was small, but it felt monumental. In many ways, it marked the end of a chapter, one that was filled with so much baggage, resentment, and heartbreak, and the beginning of something entirely new. We didn't have a grand reception, but we didn't need one. Our celebration was simple: a quiet dinner, a few laughs with close friends, and the knowledge that we were starting something beautiful together. Later that night, as we said our goodbyes and headed to our small honeymoon getaway, I felt a sense of peace I had never experienced before. We were driving away from all of it. The drama, the tension, the manipulations. It was just us now, and that was all that mattered. A few months later, as Elise and I settled into our new home in Atlanta, things had continued to improve. The house was a modest one, but it was ours, our sanctuary. Elise thrived in her new role, and I had found a rhythm with my job that allowed me to focus on what mattered. We didn't need the constant drama. We didn't need to be caught up in my family's mess anymore. I still hadn't heard much from Aaron or my parents, and that was fine by me. I had reached out a few times, but the conversations were cold and distant. It felt like a chapter of my life that had been closed, with no intention of reopening it. I had finally accepted that they were never going to change. But I had changed, and that was enough. One day, as I was going through some old boxes in the attic, I came across something unexpected, a small stack of letters from my mom. They were old, from years ago, before everything had gotten so complicated. As I read through them, I could feel the tug of nostalgia. The handwriting was familiar, the words full of affection, but also full of guilt. In one of the letters, my mom had written, "I know I've made mistakes, Marcus. I've always tried to do right by you, but I know I haven't always been there when you needed me most. I just want you to know that I love you, no matter what." It wasn't much. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was a start. For the first time, I felt like she was acknowledging what had gone wrong. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to fix it. Maybe one day we'd talk, maybe we wouldn't. But I had learned that I couldn't keep waiting for their approval. I couldn't keep living for their expectations. I had to live for myself, for Elise, for the future we were building together. A week later, I got a message from Aaron. "Hey, I'm sorry for everything. I've been messed up for a while. I don't expect anything from you, but I hope we can talk sometime." I stared at the message for a long moment. For years, I had wanted him to apologize, to acknowledge the damage he had caused. But now that it was here, I didn't feel the rush of vindication I thought I would. Instead, I took a deep breath and deleted the message. I didn't need him to apologize. I didn't need his approval. I had finally let go of the past, and that was enough. Elise and I spent the next few years building the life we wanted, one day at a time. The peace I had found in myself, in our relationship, allowed me to leave the past behind. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need to ask anyone for their approval. I had built something good for myself, and that was all that mattered. The world felt lighter, freer, and I knew deep down that I had finally made the right choice. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I heard the doorbell ring. Elise was in the kitchen, humming along to the radio as she prepped dinner, and for a moment, I thought nothing of it. But when I opened the door, I froze. Standing there on the other side of the threshold was my father. He looked older than I remembered, his hair graying at the temples, his posture slumped in a way that made him seem smaller, weaker somehow. He didn't speak immediately, just stood there with a slight frown, like he didn't quite know what to say next. "Dad," I said, surprised by the mix of emotions that flooded over me. "What are you doing here?" He shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting over my shoulder into the house, clearly unsure how to begin. I was in the area, thought I'd stop by." There was a long silence. I stood there, waiting for him to continue, but the weight of everything between us made the air thick and heavy. "I didn't expect you to show up here," I said, finally breaking the silence. "You and I haven't talked in a while." He nodded slowly, his gaze falling to the ground. "I know. I've been thinking a lot about everything, Marcus. About the family. About what's been going on between us." It was strange, hearing him admit that. For years, it had always been me carrying the weight of that relationship, trying to fix things, trying to get him to see me as more than just the responsible one or the fixer. But now, with the space and time we had taken, something had shifted in me. I no longer needed his approval. Still, seeing him there, looking vulnerable, was unsettling. "Why now?" I asked, my voice softer than I intended. "Why after everything that's happened?" "I don't know. I've been in therapy for a few months now," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "It's not easy for me to say this, but I see now how much I've failed you. How much I've failed Leah. I always let Aaron off the hook, and I let you carry everything. You shouldn't have had to do that. I never really gave you a chance to be your own person. I never truly saw you for who you were." I let his words sink in. Therapy? It was the first time in my life I had heard my father talk like this, speak in a way that suggested he truly understood the damage he'd caused. And, despite everything, despite the years of frustration, the resentment, it did something inside me. It softened the edges of the anger I had carried for so long. I'm sorry," he said, his voice trembling. "I know I can't undo what I've done. I can't change the past. But I want to try. I want to try and make things right." There was a hesitation in me, something that held me back. I had spent so many years waiting for him to see things my way, and now that it was happening, I wasn't sure if it was too late. You've hurt me, Dad. A lot, I said, my voice steady but raw. And you're right. You failed us. But I've learned to let go. I can't keep carrying this baggage. It's been years, and I've finally moved on. I understand, he said quietly, his head bowed. I just wanted you to know that I see you. I see what you've done, and I see who you are. And I'm proud of you, Marcus. I'm proud of the man you've become, and I want to be part of your life. If you'll let me. For a moment, I stood there, unsure of how to respond. But then I thought of Elise, of everything we had worked for, everything we had built together. She was the one who helped me find peace. She was the one who had shown me that I didn't need my family's approval to be happy. I'm not ready to jump back into everything, Dad, I said, the words feeling heavier than I thought they would. I can't just forget everything, but I'm willing to start fresh. Slowly. Maybe one day, we'll be able to talk more. Maybe one day, things will get better. He nodded, understanding. There was no anger in his eyes, just a quiet acceptance. I'll take whatever you're willing to give, Marcus. I won't push. I'm just glad you're willing to try. I exhaled, finally feeling the tension begin to ease from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to fix everything, and I wasn't holding on to the past anymore. I was moving forward, and that felt like enough. Later that evening, after my dad had left, Elise and I sat together on the couch. The house felt warmer somehow, more peaceful. There had been a shift, subtle, but real. And as I looked at Elise, I realized that this was what I had been fighting for all along. Peace. I'm proud of you, Elise said softly, her hand resting on mine. I smiled, squeezing her hand. I'm proud of us. I couldn't have done any of this without you. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at ease. My past, my family, and all the messiness that came with it, it was in the rear view now. I had finally let go of the need for their approval. What mattered was the life we were building together. As we sat there, watching the quiet evening unfold outside, I realized that I had everything I needed. And that was enough. Leah had gotten engaged a few months later. She called me to share the news with a laugh in her voice, and I could hear the joy in her words. She wasn't going to invite Mom or Aaron to the wedding. She told me she wasn't ready to deal with them yet, and I understood completely. She was forging her own path, just like I had. I still hadn't heard from Aaron. I didn't expect to. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. There was no reason to go back. The next day, Elise and I adopted a dog. He was a scruffy little mutt from the shelter, and he immediately made himself at home. He was a symbol of the new life we were building, one full of love, peace, and no room for the past. Victor came by to visit a few weeks later, and as we sat in our backyard, drinking beers and talking about life, he looked around at the house, at the dog running in the yard, at Elise and me sitting there, content. You know, he said, taking a swig of his beer, I don't think I've ever seen you like this. It's like you've actually found peace. I have, I said with a grin. For the first time in my life, I've found peace. And I'm not letting it go. Victor laughed, shaking his head. Well, shit. I guess I was right, huh? Yeah, I said, clinking my beer bottle against his. You were. And with that, I realized I had everything I had ever wanted. And, for the first time, I had it on my own terms.